President Buhari commends the media for upholding professionalism and enhancing transparency and accountability in the nation's electoral process.
I seek your support in ensuring that you hold to the truth. You must not allow yourselves to be influenced by individuals with divisive motives.
Ahead of governorship supplementary elections on Saturday, INEC says Bauchi and Adamawa states excluded due to cult litigation.
The Commission encourages all registered voters in the areas where elections will be conducted to come out and cast their ballot.
And trial of suspended Chief Justice of Nigeria resumes, with more witnesses testifying for the prosecution.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall continue our conversation on issues around the forthcoming supplementary elections and Nigeria's democracy.
All right, as you must have heard in the news headlines, there are indications that supplementary election in Adamawa State might not hold tomorrow. But that's because, again, as we heard, that the State High Court could not rule on Thursday. According to the report we have, ruling on the counter motion filed by INEC was adjourned.
And indeed, Claire, Adamawa was one of the 6 states where INEC had scheduled supplementary governorship election following the March 9 governorship elections, in which the Independent National Electoral Commission declared inconclusive.
Indeed, of course, in 6 states. Now, just as a reminder, the affected states are Adamawa, Benue, Bauchi, Kano, Plateau, and Sokoto. Now, in some of these states, collation of results and supplementary elections were scheduled by INEC for Saturday, March the 23rd, that's tomorrow. But this, of course, was the fallout of one infraction or the other of the electoral laws by either party agents or political thugs in some of the elections in those units.
And besides the infractions, INEC declared elections in those states inconclusive, citing the margin of victory, or rather the margin of lead between the leading candidate and the runners-up as less than the number of cancelled ballots. And in other words, the number of cancelled votes appeared higher than the margin of lead.
Indeed, Karen, you're quite right. But of course, we shouldn't forget Rivers State, where we now again understand that the electoral umpire, that's INEC, has fixed supplementary elections for April the 13th. Well, Good Morning Nigeria has been following, of course, post-March 9 governorship elections developments. Yesterday, we, of course, had, our episode on that topic. And litigations, of course, trailing from political actors. For instance, the back-and-forth litigation over collation of governorship results in Bauchi State. And as we indicated earlier, the exclusion allegation of one of the political parties in Adamawa State.
Well, such litigation will trigger concerns, specifically how many of the inconclusive elections stand the chance of being concluded this Saturday? What are the issues playing up ahead of Saturday's supplementary polls? Will there be a walkover or a tightrope for INEC, given this series of litigation? Well, will security deployments be heavy or light?
All right, these are, of course, issues that very important issues, and they will form part of our discussion as we again focus on the supplementary elections and what it portends for our democracy in this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Wherever you're watching from, we welcome you as always. The pleasure is always ours to have you join us. I am Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak.
Well, of course, and we are reaching you from the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority from our capital city here in Abuja. My name is Kirin Umayo. It's indeed good to have you join us on the program this morning. That's the Friday's edition of the program. And as always, we shall bring you our complimentary segments, newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. For now, let's begin with the morning news by Musbao Danwahab. Hello, Musbao.
Hello, Kiran. Good morning. And Claire, good morning too. Welcome to the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has formally expressed Nigeria's appreciation to media practitioners in the country for enhancing the transparency and accountability of the nation's electoral process through professional conduct during the 2019 elections. Receiving the leadership of the Nigeria Union of Journalists, the president, however, made a case for support and cooperation with his administration towards bringing a sustainable end to the devastating consequences of the fake news phenomenon.
Support in ensuring that you report the truth. You must not allow yourselves to be influenced by individuals with divisive motives. I agree that journalists face significant threats in executing their mandates. Please be assured that the security agencies and all instruments will continue to do their very best to protect journalists, especially those operating in hostile environments.
Your Excellency, sir, although it is said that the media and government cannot be institutional partners, since one is expected to hold the other accountable. However, we are all stakeholders in the Nigerian project. We shall therefore, as a duty, continue to support the fight against corruption and the quest for peace and security, good governance, and the rule of law.
On electoral matters, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has scheduled 13th of April for the conduct of supplementary elections in Rivers State, while governorship supplementary elections will not hold this week Saturday in Tafawa Balewa local government area of Bauchi State, as well as Adamawa State, following litigations. This was disclosed during a press briefing by INEC in Abuja.
The litigation and consequential order only affects the collation of results for the governorship election in Tafawa Balewa local government area. Consequently, the supplementary elections will proceed as scheduled on Saturday, the 23rd day of March 2019, in the other 15 local government areas of Bauchi State, as well as in the Krifi State constituency supplementary elections in Krifi local government area. Similarly, the Adamawa State High Court issued an injunction restraining the Commission from proceeding with the supplementary elections following the application by the Movement for the Restoration and Defense of Democracy, MRDD, a registered political party which did not take part in the main election. Notwithstanding the legal action over the supplementary governorship election, elections we hold in Nasarawa Binyeri State constituency in Mayobelwa local government area of Adamawa State, where the election had to be countermanded following the death of a candidate before the polls, as well as in the Obagaya State constituency in Hong local government area.
Meanwhile, a total of 1,111 suspected electoral offenders have been arrested by the police and military during the recent 2019 general elections across the country. The Force Public Relations Officer, Assistant Commissioner of Police, Frank Umba, disclosed these at a joint media briefing of the Armed Forces and Police spokespersons of the Defense Headquarters in Abuja.
There is no doubt that the Nigerian police is the lead security agency tasked with the provision of security at the polls, while the military is to support the police and other security agencies by providing security at the outer cordons. The alleged involvement of some security agents in some of these unfortunate incidents is of serious concern to the military and the police high command.
Ahead of the supplementary governorship elections taking place on Saturday, 23rd March 2019, the Minister of Interior, Lieutenant General Abdulrahman Bello Dambazao, has directed the disclosure The closure of the land borders of Adamawa, Benue and Sokoto states with effect from 12 noon on Friday, 22nd March to 12 noon on Sunday, 24th March. In a statement by the Controller General, Nigerian Immigration Service, Mohammed Babandede, says the closing of borders is to restrict movement across the borders of the affected state during the election days. Entrepreneurs are strategizing on better ways of building brands, expanding businesses and improving the value chain in order to deal with emerging challenges and contribute to growing the nation's gross domestic products GDP. This is the focus of the Globalization and Branding Summit in Abuja, where the Minister of Communications, Adebayo Shitu, challenged participants to utilize the opportunity to crisscross ideas and come up with viable recommendations on how to make Nigeria an export hub for creativity and brands in Africa.
Of how best to benefit not only the youth but the variety of Nigerians, and we will continue to benefit from all the ideas, new ideas that may be coming from the youth of this country, so that at the end of the day, the youth will be the best for it.
And now to the judiciary, where the trial of a suspended Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onoge, resumed on Thursday at the Code of Conduct Tribunal, Abuja, with more witnesses testifying for the prosecution. Federal government says it is mobilizing all efforts towards putting the country on a sound footing for the attainment of good water and improved sanitation for all has been targeted in the Sustainable Development Goals 6. Minister of Water Resources Suleiman Adamu was speaking at the 2019 World Water Day press briefing in Abuja.
Up till now in this country, there is not a single city that can boast of water supply, uninterrupted water supply 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The way that states are paying lip service to water supply and sanitation, they need to take water and sanitation as top priority.
That's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria will continue in just a bit after this break with Claire and Kirian.
All right, welcome back. It's Friday's edition of Good Morning Nigeria, and we are broadcasting live here in Abuja, the capital city. Time now to look at what business news is trending, and Kolo Mohammed will take us on, and he speaks of Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, saying tight monetary policies will continue. And we also have latest beneficiaries of the social investment program, Trader Money. Let's join Kolo now.
It's good to have you join us on Business News. Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria is poised to ensure that Nigeria's tight monetary policy will continue in the near term, even as plans are in place to increase its funding of the agricultural sector with producers of rice, fish, tomato, textile, and palm oil, and others projected to get adequate support. The CBN governor, who said this at the conference in Lagos, assured that they will be able to maintain a stable exchange rate given the strength of Nigeria's reserves. Mr. Emefiele explained that the economy will see more growth and reduce unemployment from May 2019, when President Muhammadu Buhari's second term formally begins, adding that the Apex Bank will aggressively deepen its venture in development banking.
At the height of the drop in crude oil prices, our FX reserves had declined to 23.7 billion in October 2016. With the implementation of the tools mentioned above, the stock of our external reserve has recovered steadily and has risen to $44.8 billion as at March 19, 2019.
Now, contrary to speculation in some quarters, the Trader Money scheme and other deep microcredit products market and farmer money, a component of the Buhari administration's social investment program, are still very much in operation. The Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity to the President Office of the Vice President, Mr. Laolu Akande, said 30,000 traders across the 36 states and FCT after the national and state polls have so far benefited from the trader money loans. Mr. Akande said others have also commenced collection of the second improved loan of 15,000 naira after repayment of the initial 10,000 naira within 6 months and are likely to further receive an additional 20,000 naira and as much as 100,000 naira loans when repayment is made accordingly. Mr. Akande further noted that the second phase of the trader money loan scheme will target 10 million petty traders, a significant increase from the initial target of 2 million beneficiaries. Now to stock. Investors lose 57.99 billion naira in Wednesday's trading as the Nigerian Stock Exchange All-Share Index closes below 31,000 basis points. Next is a graphic representation of the closing figures. And finally, Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed has been appointed Board of Trustees Chairman of the African Union Peace Fund. The AU made the appointment on Thursday in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, in a statement issued by the Special Advisor to the Minister of Media and Communication, Mr. Paul Abechi. The Minister expressed appreciation and commitment towards achieving the agenda of the Special Fund. The board has 5 African members, each representing a region, and 2 non-African members comprising United Nations and European Union as international partners. The Minister of Finance is representing the West African sub-region on the board. And on that positive note, we wrap business news at this time. Many thanks for your time. I'm Kolo Muhammad. Thanks for watching.
And that has been Kolo Mohammed with the business news for today. We now have time to bring you newspaper review in just a while.
All right, time again to look at the newspaper and all the news trending. Bayo Atayebi, as always, is here in his Friday mood. Have you activated the Friday mode?
Thank God it's Friday. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning,
Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, and this morning we have about 6 newspapers to review, yes. And most of them, if not all, have the political stories as the lead stories.
That's the trending news.
Exactly.
18 states of the Federation.
Exactly. And I have Claire, I have New Telegraph here as the first one, right? So let's go to the headlines. To the lead headlines, the New Telegraph newspaper. Tambuwa or Tom Ganduje, Lalong battle for survival. With 4 riders, INEC holds supplementary elections in 18 states. You can get the story at pages 2 and 12. Now, 3 wrecks to oversee Kano. Court halts Adamawa polls. Let Nigerians will prevail, U.S. tells INEC and security agencies. Of course, if you look at leadership newspaper, it also has as lead story, INEC concludes governorship polls in Kano, Benue, Plateau, Sokoto tomorrow. It's on page 4 with 3 riders. Says we must avoid constitutional crisis to resume collation of Rivers results April 2nd. Rerun elections to hold in parts of Bauchi and Adamawa. Claire.
All right, of course, all the papers trending talk about or speak about the supplementary polls tomorrow. The Nigerian Tribune is not left out, and it has at its own rider, supplementary poll, 3 more wrecks for Kano, 3 state borders closed, and the riders come in 3. 22,641 voters expected in Bauchi polls. Don't conduct Bauchi rerun without Tafawa Balewa results, PDP writes INEC. And in Rivers, INEC to complete collation of results in April 2. Whole supplementary poll April the 13th. You can read up the details of these on pages 2, 3, and 4. Let me quickly take on other political stories. On the front page of the Punch, you have INEC reacts as US says voter intimidation in Nigeria's 2019 polls disappointing. Let me read out the two reactions. Effects from the US is on the my left-hand column. That's to your right. We too were disappointed by the low voter turnout, as well as credible reports of voter intimidation, vote buying, interference by security forces, and violence in some locations. And INEC reacts, in our reckoning, coupled with various reports released by local and international observers, so far, the 2019 general elections were a success, but by no means perfect. INEC. Okay, and APC, just a little below the nameplate, APC PDP trade rigging allegations ahead of Saturday polls. INEC sends 3 additional recs, we've said that before. Police deploy 5 DIGs, 15 CPs, and AIGs. You can find out the details and which states on pages 2 and 41. And again, trading at the bottom, INEC insists no certificates for Okorocha, others declared under duress, page 25. And, okay, last political story, I want to look at it. It's on the front page of Nigerian Pilot. But let's now return to Bayo. Bayo, there's so much to talk about.
Yes, let's start with the reaction from the United States Embassy. And specifically, the embassy says that as a long-time friend of Nigeria, it will continue to follow the ongoing elections. And it has said that it has no preferred party or candidate, but it has enjoined all stakeholders to work for free, fair, credible, and transparent and peaceful process in the supplementary elections that will come up tomorrow. The INEC also actually reiterated that INEC says that it appreciates the support the United States has provided Nigeria electoral process, but pointing out that no country in the world could conduct a perfect election from beginning to their end. INEC says it is reckoned with the fact that, and coupled with the various reports from local and international observers, so far, the 2019 elections were a success, but by no means perfect. There are lessons to be learned and room for improvement. The Commission assured that it will continue to do the best, hoping that major players will play according to the rules and no political office is worth the life of any human being. Meanwhile, the Independent National Electoral Commission is to conclude rescheduled supplementary governorship elections in Benue for governors in Benue, Kano, Plateau, and Sokoto states tomorrow. After the March 9th election, INEC actually declared elections inconclusive in 6 states for the governorship election. However, in the case of Adamawa and Bauchi, court cases had now altered the process. For Bauchi, INEC is to conduct governorship elections in 29 polling units spread across 15 local government areas. But voters in Tafa Balewa local government will wait the outcome of the court case filed by the APC and Governor Abubakar Mohammed. A restraining court order will also preclude the governorship election in Adamawa State. For the suspended governorship election in Rivers State, INEC says that it has slated April 2nd for resumption of collation, and announcement of a winner is expected by April 15. INEC has, however, cautioned about heading towards a constitutional crisis if litigations halting its electoral processes are not completed before May 29. You know, the term of all administrations, particularly those that are involved in elections, are supposed to end by May 28. And
now, to what extent does the court have the power to stop electoral process? Because, of course, we've had in the past that no court should stop electoral process. What happened in this matter?
Well, there are 3 levels. There are pre-election matters, there are election matters, and the others that go to the tribunal that subsequently goes to the appeal. So if you cross the border between these 3, that is when some will tell you that there are no, directly, when it comes to elections, courts will have no interference. But what happens where, for instance, a party says it is registered, it was supposed to contest in an election, and its logo was omitted from the election, apparently precluding it from that election? Will that party fold its hands and keep quiet? Naturally, when your rights are violated, you go to court to seek the redress. And it is incumbent on the courts to listen to everybody within the context of the law and then give us legal direction and precedence as far as the electoral law and the laws are concerned.
The case of
In the case of Bauchi, I won't want to comment on that because it's sub judice. It's already before a court of law.
All right, Bayo, this is even the focus of our conversation today on Good Morning Nigeria. Of course, we will have legal practitioners to really look at some of the issues, especially the one that you have read that has to do with exclusion on the ballot, because it's quite confusing. And again, the issue with Bauchi, again, that's Tafawa Balewa. There's a lot of people are misunderstanding what is the supplementary elections that are scheduled to hold in the different LGAs and what exactly is the issue with Tafawa Balewa local government area.
The issue with Tafawa Balewa local government area is that the governor of Bauchi State and the APC in Bauchi State have gone to court to stop the supplementary elections
The collation
there.
of results.
Yes.
The collation of
the
results.
collation of the results there, which the INEC said it was going to continue.
Exactly.
So that result is in dispute, and until the court resolves that issue of Tafawa Balewa will be held in abeyance.
And
All right.
that aspect of collation was the reason I even raised the issue of the court stopping it, because it's an electoral process that is still ongoing, so to speak, because it was inconclusive, and they are now collating results, and all of a sudden it is stopped. And what questions, where...
I think we shouldn't even drag Bayo into that, because that's the crux of our discussion later on today, Bayo, yes. So, but we have other also very important stories, and the Nigerian pilot has it on its front page. It has to do with, of course, the judiciary. Federal government closes case against quite a number of riders as suspended CJN prepares for a no-case submission. Onogen's 3-year asset declaration form not verified. Witness says he has only 5 houses contrary to allegation of 55. Suspended CJN does not have $1 million in bank account, and CCT chair threatens journalists with 28 years jail for contempt. All the papers have this story on their front pages. Of course, some of them didn't give it as much prominence.
Okay,
you have
right
it?
now, let's turn to Daily Trust newspaper. Let's take some stories from there. And what is not fresh that they have as least stories, of course, the one we have read in other, but that is INEC set to set for supplementary elections. Well, there is in 18 states tomorrow. I mean, that's the additional information on the elections, because we were talking about 6 states, and
6 states for governorship elections.
Exactly.
There are supplementary elections for state houses
of assembly in 18 yes. other states. All right. Okay, and there are other stories there below the nameplate. Onogen, just as Claire read a short while ago, federal government closes a case after 3 witnesses. And gunmen kill 2 core members in Bayelsa. It's on page 4. Federal government begins rehabilitation of Port Harcourt refinery. This is on page 17 of the Daily Trust. And looking at, going back to Daily, or rather the New Telegraph newspaper, there are other stories trending apart from political stories. And now NNPC begins rehabilitation of 210,000 PD, that's barrels per day, Port Harcourt refinery, that's on page 4. And of course, Nigeria can't make progress unless governance is right. That says Obasanjo on page 6. And abductors demand 300 million naira to free Buhari's prayer warrior is on page 9. And of course, on the foot of the New Telegraph, we have Onogen. Federal government has no case against me. Moves to file no case submission. CJN has 5 houses, not 55. It's on page 4. Let's bring back Bayo again.
Well, yes, yesterday the prosecution closed its case after calling 3 witnesses. Actually, they had listed 6 witnesses to be called, but it closed the case and immediately the defense sought consultation with the suspended Chief Justice of Nigeria, and the Defense Counsel also told the court, the tribunal, that they had opted to file a no-case submission. This, he said, is predicated on their rights under Section 303 of the Administrative of Criminal Justice Act of 2015. Accordingly, the defense is to seek that the charges be stricken out. The prosecution has failed to make out a case against the suspended Chief Justice of Nigeria. That is the defense of the case. The tribunal, however, ordered service to be made onto the prosecution, and both prosecution and the defense should be ready to address the tribunal on March 23rd. And accordingly, the tribunal will now set a date to deliver its judgment. Now, let's go to other stories. The Nigerian Union of Journalists has said that the second election of President Muhammadu Buhari offers opportunity to correct some of the perceived flaws in the first term. The Nigerian Union of Journalists delegation was led by this president, Chris Izuguzo, and they came in to congratulate President Muhammadu Buhari. But specifically, they urged the president that to whom so much is given, much more is expected. They advised that the challenges of security in the northeast with insurgency and the northwest with banditry and other parts of the country with criminality. You recall now, just in Bayelsa, 2 young men who are serving the obligation to their nation under the National Youth Service Corps have been killed by armed robbers. And so they were saying that there's a need for security overhaul. The NUJ also made a demand that press freedom should be guaranteed in consonance with the requirement of security, and therefore guarantees should be provided that journalists are not harassed in the course of their duty.
Just before we quickly take a look at the editorial, Bayo, you spoke about the 2 corps members who were killed yesterday. Also, an officer of the NSCDC, was also reportedly killed yesterday. The front page of the Nigerian Pilot, that's at the bottom there, has that story. It says police arrest 2 traffic wardens over NSCDC officer's death, and you can see it. And then somewhere again at the bottom of the Punch, you have the policemen dragged my husband on the ground till he died. NSCDC officer's wife, and another one that the census will cost over 220 billion naira, says Population Commission.
Yes. This is a demarcation in preparation for the census. Census is already 2 or 3 years due behind time, because census is supposed to be done every 10 years, and we are behind time. And that demarcation is the precursor before the census comes up. The issue of the civil defense officer who apparently was killed has been taken up by the Commissioner of Police for the FCT. The officers involved have already been arrested, and the families are demanding an autopsy so that they will be able to follow up through. But the good news is coming from the Governor of Central Bank, and he says Nigeria economy in post-May 2019 will witness a positive growth, and there is an opportunity to reduce the level of unemployment in the country. The Central Bank is also to hold its MPC next week, and the hope is that the standards will be maintained, and the determination of the Central Bank is to rein in inflation to ensure that it moderates, and therefore the economy and the gross domestic product will pick up. The other one is the situation in the National Assembly. Speculation arrive about leadership challenges, so there are now overt and covert tussle going on. For the Senate,
it has started, hasn't it?
It has started, of course, it was envisaged, But before I go to the editorials, please, let's return to that issue of killing of an NSDC staff by a police personnel. You recall that last week we had a discussion on the issue of interagency conflict. There seems not to be synergy between the, paramilitary and military. I mean, because these are law enforcement agents, and they can now not be able to relate as a staff of different security agencies. But it baffles me and many Nigerians how this could be happening in a nation like this and the present 21st century.
Well, the Acting Inspector General of Police is adamant and firm when it comes to perceived misbehavior by officers. And across board, the same situation is supposed to come from all other uniform services. Presently, the Commissioner of Police for FCT has already taken proactive actions. The alleged traffic wardens that are involved have been detained, and investigation is going on. But it's a serious case where you have to beat another uniform officer with batons and drag him until he lost so much blood and died. That is very, very serious.
All right, now to the editorials for today. It's still on the elections. It's taken from the Daily Sun newspaper. It's on page 15. For credible supplementary polls. It says INEC relied on the provisions of the sections 26 and 53 of the Electoral Act 2010 as amended, and paragraph 41E and 43B of the INEC regulations and guidelines for the conduct of the elections to order supplementary polls.
Yes, those are the basis for which election has been decided to be inconclusive. The major part being that the two leading candidates, the margin of votes in between them is less than the number of votes that was declared either void or cancelled. When such occur, then INEC has to declare that election inconclusive, in the sense that if they allow that to go, so many people who were not able to participate will have been disenfranchised, and the essence of democracy, having everybody's vote counting, will have been lost. So what the editorial is saying, that with the supplementary election coming up tomorrow, politicians must prevail on their supporters to be peaceful. INEC must also play strictly by the rule by providing a level playing ground. They also call on security agencies not to be partisan, to be neutral. And above all, they said that the Supreme Court has actually provided a ruling about the role of the military, not to be involved in the polls. There's been some confusion about the role of the military. The military is not involved directly in the polls. They are involved in providing peripheral security for all elections. In the past, the APC was in opposition. They fought against it. In the present, the PDP in the opposition is fighting against it. But in all instances, there have been instances where they have benefited from the violence that the military had prevented from disrupting the election. But the essence of the editorial is to ensure that tomorrow's supplementary election are carried out free, fair, credible, and above all, peacefully.
All right, Baya Tayebi. On that note, we wrap up our discussion here for at least newspaper review. We'll let you go to go kickstart your weekend.
Thank you.
And we'll see you here by the grace of God on Monday.
Thank you.
All right.
God spares our life till Monday. Thank you.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and time for us to kick off the business. Kieran.
Yeah, we'll take a break now. When we return, we'll go to the nitty-gritty of our conversation today. All right, we thank you for staying with us up to this moment on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. And now we have guests to actually address matters arising, or matters that may arise as we get set for the supplementary elections bid for tomorrow. First, we have Mazi Afam Osigwe. Mazi Afam Osigwe was a former Secretary General, Nigerian Bar Association. It's a pleasure to have you this morning, Afam.
Thanks for having me.
Claire.
All right, we have, of course, here with us in the studio, Chinwe Buka, who is the Assistant Director, Publicity, Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. Thank you, Chinwe, for joining us. And good to see you again.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right. Also here with us, our in-house security expert, Kabiru Adamu. Kabiru, always a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure is mine. Good morning.
All right, let's start from INEC, and I'm going to ask Chinwe to clarify for us the true and exact position of the, Adamawa and Bauchi supplementary elections. What is likely to happen in those states tomorrow?
Thank you very much, Claire. Like we had a briefing yesterday by the Commissioner in charge of Information and the Voter Education Committee, Festus Okoye Esquire, that gave us a breakdown and a brief of update of the elections we're having in 18 states, Adamawa and Bauchi inclusive. Yes, we have a court order on about Bauchi, for the governorship. For the senatorial and House of Rep, That one, there's no problem. That one is going on. It's only in Bauchi, it's only in governorship that we have the court injunction. But like he said, the commission quickly sent a delegation, the team, to vacate that order. So maybe before the end of the day, and we will know what the situation is like.
That's with
the
the
order
Bauchi?
for, yes, for Bauchi.
Yeah. Okay. What about Adamawa? Sorry, Adamawa. What is the true position? What is happening?
It's also the same thing. The election, like we know, the commission is insisting because the court order given is we are trying to see how we can vacate that and conduct the election there, because it's more of a technical.
But we hear there's been an adjournment of ruling on the case. Is that the case?
Yeah, there's an adjournment.
For Tuesday. So
for Tuesday.
Adamawa may linger, after tomorrow. All right, Chima, we had you yesterday. We had you yesterday on a similar topic, and of course you promised Nigerians that INEC is quite prepared and good to go. But I want to take you back to the just concluded elections, because INEC apparently was disappointed by some ad hoc staff who didn't do their job well. I recall a drunken INEC official, maybe ad hoc, that was unable to discharge his responsibilities on an election day because of his state of mind. Now, what measures would you say INEC will put in place come tomorrow to ensure that we debilitate and, of course, vitiate the experience we had in the last two elections?
Yeah, it's quite unfortunate, that incident of ad hoc staff that was said to be drunk. Of course, if you're in that state of mind, he could not perform his duties. But going by what happened, definitely after every election, some of those problems and challenges that we are observed, the Commission tries to address those problems to ensure that such problems do not occur again. And I'm sure the person that was in that state, that was drunk, could not perform his duty. Definitely, he's not going to be part of this election. And other measures, disciplinary measures, must have been taken against him to be a deterrent to others. So, and our staff have been given a refresher course and refresher training to ensure that this election will come out fine and good.
Okay, Mazi, I also like you to look at supplementary elections. I know quite a number of persons have raised concerns about supplementary elections arising from inconclusive elections and all that. What are your thoughts about supplementary elections, first of all?
Before the election, INEC published their guidelines or regulations, which stipulated that if as a result of their inability to deploy material to a place as a result of difficulties or violence or whatever, the conduct of the election or the collation is disrupted, and then the election is or for any other reason, the election is cancelled, and then the margin of lead between the person that polled the highest number of votes and the runner-up is not more than the number of cancelled votes, that it will hold supplementary elections in those places. And this is fine in principle because it ensures that the votes of persons in these affected areas count towards determining who represents either the constituency or the state as governor. But that is looking at it as if it were that simple. But this throws up a lot of challenges. Challenges of a person or persons losing in a particular area, resorting to violence so as to get those votes cancelled. It also raises the issue of the whimsical nature that an electoral officer or returning officer may, without any resort to logic, just arbitrarily decide to cancel votes because they say there's alleged violence. And also the difficulties as is playing out in Bauchi, where even though the disruption may have taken place at a collation center, a decision is made to cancel those votes, even where there are available votes from the polling units and other levels where those elections took place. And to the extent that it will introduce arbitrariness and encourage violence, to that extent, should we be a bit circumspect about the issues that may give rise to inconclusive election, and the fact that it may rob the election of credibility. And there's also fear, as people will now call it, the Oshun treatment, that when you bring about situations that could make for inconclusive election, you may make for over-militarization or the use of police, as was alleged in Osun State, indeed as reported by the NBA observers that monitored that election, and then large-scale vote buying and intimidation of voters and violence. So it throws up a whole lot of issues. It's not as simple as it is. INEC was well-intentioned in bringing this out because if people voted, their votes should be part of determining who leads them. But where politicians resort to use of force or the hand tactics to gain an advantage in order to prevent a person from taking advantage of votes that may inure to his benefit, it leaves a lot to be desired. And then where security agencies don't seem to do much to prevent these situations, and then nobody is prosecuted. So there's a whole gamut of issues arising from this that is not as simple as it may seem. Yes.
All right, but we'll return to you much later, because those gray areas should be raised in this conversation. But right now, let's turn to Kabiru Adamu. Nigerians are beginning to come to terms with the inconclusive elections, starting from 2003. Just yesterday, one of our guests on this platform, Jide Ojo, to be precise, he insisted that the persistent stalemated elections in Nigeria is good omen for the electoral process of the nation. Actually, he went ahead to say that it's as a result of the competitiveness of the election that could lead to stalemated elections. Perhaps because there is no longer landslide victory for anybody. So what's your thoughts?
I agree with Jide to the extent that in the indications that came after both the presidential and state governorship elections, as well as the national and state assembly elections, appear to be a reflection of the growth in our electoral process. Some of the steps that INEC has taken has made the environment a bit more competitive. In the past, the general agreement was that most elections were either rigged by the most affluent quote-unquote political party or the party that be in place. But a good example is the introduction of the card reader machine and other biometric processes within the electoral process. They've increased the capacity of INEC to determine, for instance, who votes. And that has now introduced new elements into the electoral system, introducing better competitiveness. But ahead of the elections, in our risk assessment processes, one of the things that we identified is the expectations on INEC from Nigerians. Does INEC have that capacity to meet the expectations, and has INEC managed its information dissemination process enough to make Nigerians understand what it can do and what it cannot do? I'm bringing this to agree totally with what my co-speaker here has mentioned, that inconclusive elections may be well-intentioned by INEC, but unfortunately, the dimensions that come out of the inconclusive elections has introduced new risk elements within the Nigerian polity. A good example is the situation in Kano right now, where you have both the sitting governor and the opposition, the main opposition party, more or less claiming victory. And I think that's the reflection in almost all the other 6 or 7 locations where we have either inconclusive elections or stalled electoral processes, such as River State. As the case were. So the big question now really for INEC is how does it come out of this with its credibility intact? On the one hand, you have the main opposition party accusing INEC of favoring the ruling party, while you have the ruling party accusing INEC. A very difficult situation, I must say, and like I said, I attribute that to INEC's inability to manage its information dissemination process so that Nigerians understand clearly its capacity to deliver on the expectations of Nigerians.
Okay, I'm still remaining with you on the issue that Mazi Afam raised. He raised the issues of arbitrariness and security that might probably underpin supplementary elections. But might that always be the case with supplementary elections?
Unfortunately, I know. I would give INEC the credit, and I've said this before on this platform. INEC has the latest risk management tool. That's my profession, and I know I study it. I travel all over the world for seminars. The electoral risk management tool that INEC has is the latest in the industry. Unfortunately, the challenge is one of coordination. So we're going into supplementary elections. We have a situation where you have the Nigerian military, to an extent, accusing the Nigerian police of sabotaging its efforts, more or less, and to an extent even accusing INEC of not working together with it. Meanwhile, you have the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security, where these two, all the security agencies meet together. It's chaired by INEC. That matter should never have come to the public. It should have been addressed at that platform, so that what Nigerians hear is a common language coming out of INEC under the auspices of that committee, that this is the provisions for security. I don't know if INEC understands the implication of not managing the security processes very well, to the extent that Nigerians are a bit apprehensive in certain locations to come out to vote during the supplementary election. So while the 2 points raised, arbitrariness and the conduct of security during elections, are valid, I think the platform for managing them is available to INEC. Whether INEC is using that platform or not is another matter entirely. I've spoken to at length on whether the person managing that department in INEC is doing his work the way it should be. In other words, the director of security in INEC. We are not hearing from him. There are corporate organizations, for example, that would have benefited from prior information indicating that there will be no movement on Saturday. I know a lot of organizations that would have closed their offices today because that information was not available to them. That information only came out yesterday. That's an information that should have been given probably, the day we decided there will be supplementary elections.
Okay, I was just going to say, what kind of security risk do we envisage? Because this is just isolated, election, so we don't expect to have an expansive security, apparatus. So what kind of security risks are we envisaging for supplementary elections?
Claire, let's start from the clarification that there will be supplementary elections in 18 states, as it were, and Her Excellency will clarify that point. And then in terms of where we see the higher risk, this will be states where the elections were declared inconclusive. So majorly Kano, Sokoto, Plateau, Benue. Adamawa and Bauchi are very contentious for the issues that were raised earlier on. In terms of our risk assessment, we've identified Rivers and Adamawa State as ones of highest risk. And a lot of factors have led to that categorization. One of them is the conduct of politicians, that I'm very happy yesterday in your program you spoke at length on that, the do-or-die attitude that politicians approach elections with. Then, of course, unfortunately, the conduct of security agencies themselves that have given the perception that they may be biased in one form or the other. And I underline the word perception. It may not be correct to that extent. Another factor that is also very important are non-state actors that are involved in the electoral processes, especially youth gangs, that unfortunately politicians sometimes use to achieve their objectives. So that has led to categorization of those two states. But having said that, the other states that we're watching very closely are the other states, Sokoto, Plateau, Kano, and Benue, where the elections have been declared as inconclusive. And for obvious reasons, the stakes are high, politicians will do everything to their extent. What manner of security deployment are we going to see on Saturday, tomorrow? Unfortunately, that has not been clarified, but we know from the functions of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security what each agency is expected to do. Are we going to see that tomorrow? I'm not very confident.
Okay, let's put you on hold. I know,
Yes, because we'll return to Chinwe, because Kaibiru has raised very critical points here with respect to security. Of course, INEC is the epicenter of all of this, but he is talking about management of the security architecture, who are posted for elections. But I was also wondering, why he said that, because the police, lead, is the lead agency when it comes to security. To what extent, does INEC come in here in terms of ensuring security on election day?
Yeah, to a very large extent, INEC is involved because INEC is the umpire, and we have this interagencies consultative committee on election security that involves all security agencies. The chairman is the chairman of the committee, and then that of security advisor. Then the police is involved, the federal safety, the army. They are all involved. They are all members of this SS committee. But INEC, of course, they have their deployment plan. Like I said, the security agencies are directly involved with the security. INEC is part of it because INEC will tell them, now we need so number of policemen or security agencies in the polling unit. And theirs is to map out their operational plans and know how many do we need, what number do we need, and how do we deploy them. So they have that arrangement with the police. Police, like we said, is the lead agency in securing electoral environment.
But recall yesterday, because you were here yesterday, when one observer who was our guest yesterday, his name is Mokhtar Modibo, he mentioned that in some polling units that he actually observed, there are in fact, in one of the polling units in Karo, for instance, he said one unarmed female police officer was there, and that particular polling unit had up to 1,000, registered voters. So, I mean, in the face of any kind of conflict or misunderstanding and what have you, what will she be able to do? Can she really do anything? And when you talk about deployment, which of course you say falls under the purview of INEC, now how do you ensure that people that are posted to polling units are there and the numbers specified are represented?
No, you see, when you plan things, you know what exactly you need and you know what you are planning for. You can plan, but the execution at times might be a problem. Like I said, our guideline is that we have 4 policemen, 4 security agencies at the polling unit. Now, if we now map out and plan, we have 4, and in the deployment paper, we have 4. If anything happens, if only one is there, there must be a problem. So we need to find out what happened. Does it mean that the people who were scheduled to be there were not there? And what happens? There has to be a disciplinary measure to ensure that those who were not on the duty post, where they were assigned.
Who takes responsibility? Is it INEC or the police in that circumstance?
I think both.
Okay.
Both.
Yes, Chinwe, we'll come because the main issue that Kabiru raised is that of management. You understand? He said he has said INEC has not been able to manage the platforms available to you effectively. But we will get back to you while you put some thoughts to that question. Afam, let's probably clarify for us. Yes.
Managing the platform effectively. Please, can you give us a clearer picture? Let's have a clearer picture of what you mean by we not managing the platform effectively.
Okay,
Let's get it clear.
Okay.
I've looked at the functions of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security that's listed out, in your website. What it says is that one of the responsibilities of that committee is to look at infractions by security agencies and recommend disciplinary measures. Now we have a situation, just the example he gave, and I've seen it. I did election observation under the Transition Monitoring Group in Lagos, and I've been to polling units where I saw just one police lady in particular. I've also conducted training for police and even military personnel, and we were told ahead of the election that they would be wearing tags that would help us identify who they are. I didn't see that in all of that, and I have not once have I had INEC or ISIS come out to tell Nigerians why it didn't happen. So I'm happy that you've mentioned control, which is one of the elements. You plan, but for your plan to be effective, there has to be control mechanisms. Clearly, Nigerians, quote and unquote, were shortchanged, because there were promises made by the security agencies. And given the fact that I've worked extensively in this sector, I know that corruption is an element. Monies will be collected, and sometimes those monies will not be used for the purpose. So my point is we should go back to ISS, look at the functions of ISS, and ensure that the functions are implemented, the way they are spelled out there. By now, ISS should have come up with a committee to investigate the infractions that have been covered extensively by the media and civil society organizations from both the presidential and national assembly to the governorship and state assembly elections. And some of these recommendations, if at all that committee had been constituted, these recommendations would have helped in the supplementary elections. I mentioned earlier on that I'm not sure what your department on security, whether they are doing all of this. I don't expect the chairman himself to carry out those functions. It should be your department on security that should help the chairman implement that. I have not once since the preparations for the election started till today have I had any statement from your department on security.
Yeah, yes, so thank you very much. Let me also ask, I'm sure when you people
no,
are in the
I
field,
think yes, let's just keep you on hold for now. Let's bring in Afam, because there are so many issues that we need to talk about in a very short time. Afam, please, can you give us a sense of understanding what exactly is happening, especially with the case of Bauchi and Admawa? There's a lot seem to be happening that we can't really understand, and people are giving their own different interpretations. That's as regards the supplementary elections, whether or not it will or it will not be in both states. Do you have a clear understanding of what is going on?
Well, I have a clear understanding of the confusion thrown up by the whole process. Now, why do I say this? We have an unfortunate situation where the regular courts are being dragged into the electoral issues. And because of the seeming, in some cases, indecisiveness of INEC as to what particular course of action to take example, Bauchi, you says there will be supplementary election, then before reviewing the facts on the ground, then you, after taking a decision, you review a fact, and you reviewed your decision, giving room for a person to go to court. Now, it's not about passing blame. A whole lot of us may, at the end of the day, be culpable for the roles we may have played. The lawyers who took these matters to court, the parties who thought the court should be dragged into this matter, the judges who injuncted the process, and an INEC for the missteps leading to some of these things. Then the politicians who subverted the process by unleashing violence, the security agencies that sometimes stood and did nothing, or sometimes provided protection for those who perpetrated these acts of violence and electoral malpractices, or who actually participated in the same. Now, he has talked about INEC not being able to take control of the security system. But how do you do that in a real sense of it? You request for security, they are posted, they are not answerable to you. They take, they take instruction orders from their superiors or those who posted them to that place. And so that's why you have situations where they may not even appear. We have the situation in is it Okot or somewhere in Lagos, where a lone police person was chasing after people who were trying to snatch ballot boxes, not armed, could have been killed. So we should look at, in managing this security process, INEC has very nice plans, but they are dependent on security agencies, the voters, the political parties, the politicians themselves, to ensure that we get it right. And it becomes helpless. So that's why you see the INEC calling out the army. And we should also ask ourselves, to what extent is it important to involve the army in the whole process? To what extent should they be involved, if at all? Even in the light of court judgments saying they shouldn't.
Can we speak specifically to her reaction about the Bauchi, whether or not the supplementary elections in Bauchi will hold?
If there's a court order and INEC is a party, and she has said they've instructed their lawyers, if they're unable to have that court order vacated, INEC as a law-abiding citizen would respect the court order. But she said the other elections that were not affected by the court order would go ahead. But the ones that were injuncted, until those injunctions are lifted, their hands are tied. For example,
bearing in mind that the court that gave the injunction is a state high court, And is also dealing with a pre-election matter, if I don't...
They did say in the law that because you think a court that give an order does not have jurisdiction, you will not stay in your house, stay in your house and say you will not obey it. It is proper that matter be taken before the court for a proper action to be taken, vacating it. You may feel that, yes, it was done without jurisdiction, but it should be injuncted. But we should worry about a situation where an election is fixed on a Saturday and a court on a Wednesday or Thursday injuncts it and adjourns 2 days after that election. I think there's everything to be worried about this. If that church court fails, he should give such an order, whether in interim or interlocutory. He must fix his decision before the day fixed there for the election. Because we must make sure that these things don't happen. The courts are becoming, some of our judges, with due respect, are being dragged into this process. We are judicializing the political process so much. And some of these orders, with due respect, ought not to have been made in the first place.
I think, Claire, one thing very, very pertinent that he raised is, first of all, as he started, that he has a clear understanding of the confusion. And of course, it's on record that, as he also pointed out, that the judiciary is eating so much deep into this process. And now we just hope that we'll get out of this electoral quagmire, you know, after this supplementary election. But I want to return to Kaibiru in the sense that, you know, pockets of violence were recorded in the states where we are going to have a regional election, which actually precipitated, you know, the inconclusive nature of elections in those areas. And that means that security concerns are inevitable. Now, what kind of security architecture would you like to see the police put in place as we do this rerun on Saturday?
Okay, I wouldn't want to overemphasize the role of the police only. I would like to see the architecture as a whole. As far as I know, there are 24 organizations that are under the Interagency Committee on Electoral Security. The general perception is that the police is the lead agency for civil security defense. But I'll cite an example. Let's use Kano, Sokoto State as an example. Sokoto has borders with Niger. And as far as I know, there will be supplementary elections in about 20 plus local governments in Sokoto. So imagine a situation where the immigration service does not get involved. No matter how good the police is, if the immigration is not involved, the borders will be porous, possibly foreign elements will come in and subvert the electoral process, either by voting where they shouldn't vote or even committing some acts of aggression here and there. So my point is that no agency should see itself as alone for electoral security management. They should work together in synergy for implementation of the electoral security management protocols under the platform of ISIS. And I'm happy that the Commissioner of Police in Sokoto has spoken at length on this. The essence of having that platform is for them to work together. The Department of State Services, the DSS, has the responsibility for collating intelligence with which these organizations would work. So that pool where intelligence can be dropped so that each agency can work with that intelligence, and I hope that will be implemented on Saturday. So as an example, one of the agencies pick up information that a certain cult group or youth gang group is coming to disrupt elections in a particular local government. Maybe the police is not present in that local government for obvious reasons. The police is stretched, they don't have enough personnel, but most likely civil defense or even the State Department, DSS, will be represented in that local government. So they should be able to pull from that intelligence and then deploy to that area and prevent that from happening. Because remember, the primary objective of intelligence is prevention of incidences. We should not wait until the things happen before we react. And the only way for us to ensure that is done is that these agencies work together in synergy under the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security at the state and probably the local government levels.
Okay, Chiwe, can you just outline for us so that we know where collation of results, you know, in how many states a collation of results taking place and where is supplementary election taking place?
Supplementary election, like we said, is taking place in 6 states.
6 states?
States, yes. We have, that's governorship, you mean? Governorship?
Yes, collation of results.
Collation of 80 states. Then We have the states that elections are taking place. I mentioned Kano, Sokoto, Plateau, Benue, Bauchi, Bauchi and Adamawa are in contention because of the existing court cases. But for Rivers, also Rivers arrangement is in progress, because Rivers is also for collation of a result. And when we had a briefing yesterday, we had a timetable for Rivers. First of all, there was an engagement with the security agencies, a meeting they had, and then we're also having an ESS meeting on the 29th of March, also in Port Harcourt. Then the meeting of stakeholders will take place on the 30th, and by hopefully before the end of the month, we are having also a collation of results, and we'll start in April 1st. That's for Rivers. But for other places, the collation of results in the polling units where there were disruptions, they are continuing.
Now, we're talking about collation of results.
Yes.
Many Nigerians may ask, what is the guarantee that the results being collated now may not have been tampered with? You know, because, I mean, it's all a thing of trust, you know, and transparency. Huh? What is the guarantee they are not tampered with? That is one. Two is when a returning officer declares an election inconclusive, does INEC, as a body, have the right to overturn that decision?
Actually, when you send your collation officials or returning officers to the field, you give them responsibilities and you trust them, you trust their judgment. So if they now return an election inconclusive, we believe that it's best of their abilities and it's to the interest of the nation that they have done that. So we trust them, we believe them.
Just like, you know, when declaring result under duress. Just like that. Is it not part of... because the report was that it was under duress that somebody declared result.
They did not follow the guideline. They did not follow the rules and guidelines governing the election. And that is why you are not supposed to force somebody to do something.
Exactly.
Yes,
exactly.
because if, for them to save their lives, they can say, okay, let me just do that, then they'll do their report. Right. Because they're very dangerous.
Okay, Afam, again, when you were speaking earlier on, you raised the issue of timing. And I'm going to ask you, might there have been, or do you envisage any constitutional breach, you know, as provided for in the Constitution, electoral laws or INEC laws, with the timing of the supplementary elections?
Well, I think the most important thing is that the election has taken place. What the Constitution did is to give a maximum time and a minimum time for INEC to conduct the election before expiration of the term of tenure of the present occupant. So an INEC has complied with this. Though people may argue that holding means starting and concluding, but I think it would be safer to have these processes concluded before these timelines as to avoid any issues of interpretation as to whether the constitutional provision has been complied with. But I think the most important thing would be to ensure that the issues that keep extending the ability of INEC to conclude this process are sorted out, so that the level of uncertainty being experienced in the polity will be cleared, so that any person who feels aggrieved with the final outcome of the process will then be able to properly exercise all the options available to them. But I also think it should call to question our ability to conduct an election, that whoever wins or loses will be able to take the outcome as being a true reflection of the will of the people. I keep using the will of the people. He made reference to what Jido just said. Somewhat I'm tempted not to quite agree with him. The continuing nature of the inconclusive nature of our election, especially those that arise as a result of violence and intimidation of voters, or refusal to use candidate readers or to deploy material and personnel to conduct the election, should more count against us. It does not show the competitive nature of the election. It has more to do with the management of the electoral process and the ability of people to resort to violence without the state being able to curtail the ability to subvert the process. And until we pay attention to this, it is not a reflection, because that's why you may have a situation where a person is held under duress to declare a result of an election, because in Nigeria, people take it that might is right, rig, win, be declared winner, let the other man go and suffer. And then when you are the incumbent, you have more money to defend than the petitioner. Until we get these things right. And that is why I'm glad that INEC refused to issue returning officer to the returning certificate of return to the affected person, because if you use violence to get yourself declared winner, then it means that there was no declaration in the first place. It's a difference between that the process that led to the tabulated result was faulty, and then you could challenge that successfully. But for you, by force of arms or threat of violence, or even inflicting grievous bodily harm or killing a person, get yourself declared winner, you're like that's like a man that coronated himself and put a crown on his head. There's nothing there. So if INEC had issued certificate of return, it would have amounted to legitimizing resort to violence, and we'll see more of that happening. Because, you say you can do this. So you can score the least number of votes and put a gun to the man's head and say, declare me winner. And I'm glad that that returning officer still had the presence of mind to continue saying, I am still doing this under duress. I'm doing this so that I'll be alive for my family. And it's very, very important. And it also brings to question the security component of the electoral process. To what extent are those who are attached to public functionaries, government officials, abuse their office? To what extent do security details assigned to public officials think that they own, their loyalty lies to the individual, not to the state to which they have sworn a duty to abide by these laws and obey the Constitution, and that they are being abused? We need to look at some of these things and make sure that we get it right. A process that, and also have a collation of results that does not make somebody to travel all the way from my home state to come to Abuja to just stand before a television and read their results that he could have done from the state. A situation that allows INEC to also stay back at the headquarters and also know that the result being declared within that state is a reflection of the returns from the polling units. So I do not think that inconclusive nature shows a competitive nature. It shows our descent into anarchy and violence in order to win at all costs.
Just before Kirian, I know Kirian has a question, but I'd also like you to speak to, again, you said INEC would have taken the right step. INEC filed, with regards to the issue in Adamawa, INEC had filed a counter, motion. Of course, it wasn't ruled on. What other step or option was open to INEC?
No, probably you didn't quite get me. I didn't lay any blame on INEC. I laid the blame on a judge who grants injunction in this circumstance and adjourns beyond the date fixed for the election. I laid the blame on the inability of our judicial system to know that these are issues of urgency that can be resolved in a day. I breach times and ask parties to address it. First, do I have jurisdiction?
Fine.
But we resort to legal gymnastics just because somebody has a mindset and they're just capitalizing on time. Why would you adjourn beyond that date? Shouldn't you rule so that those who are involved should know one way or the other whether that election should take place?
Since that court does not have jurisdiction.
No, why would the court just, for example, say, I adjourn to today for you to address me to show cause why I should not grant this injunction? And the person is saying, I do not think you have jurisdiction. Why shouldn't the court say, parties address me, and the court sit still? These issues are resolved. That's why you see from some West African countries, election petitions, presidential election petitions are determined within 21 days, 28 days. But for us, we have to take 180 days.
I'm not a lawyer, I'm going to ask you some questions for further clarification.
Okay.
Now that that court has no jurisdiction, according to our laws, and it is evident that it has no jurisdiction, does it matter if INEC goes ahead and, conducts the election?
It does. It does. It will be resorting to self. Like I said, INEC is not a court. No matter how strongly you feel about an order made by a court, the rightness of it, the absence of jurisdiction in making it, it is better that the judicial process make that pronouncement. I do not think any of the courts have jurisdiction. But for the life of me, I will defend those orders until they are set aside, and INEC is right in obeying them till they get an order saying, you can go ahead and conduct election.
In fact, many Nigerians will be delighted that this is coming from a lawyer, a judge adjourning a case beyond the date of the election, so making it look as if we're not being properly directed. I'll return to Kabiru, because the security component of this election is apt, because I believe that it is part of the failure of the security management that led to all this inconclusive nature of the election, because most of the areas the elections were inconclusive. There were pockets of violence in those areas. And now, some of my colleagues here in NTA have been privileged to cover elections in other African countries. Whether we like it or not, Nigeria is still passing through a nascent period of a democratic process. There are no two ways about it, because of course we have majority of illiterates who are voting. Now, and they said that in those countries that armed policemen and military men were drafted at the polling units. And people will say that it is a part of a way to intimidate the voters. But we see policemen and military men posted in different establishments in this country at different times and occasions, and people still go about their businesses without being molested or something. Now, one is prompted to begin to think in the direction of ensuring that the polling units are manned by armed men, because if the hoodlums are cashing in on the fact that the little number of policemen you have at the polling units are unarmed. So what will you do? For instance, a group that wants to snatch a ballot box, usually they don't come without being armed. They come with arms, and they will just shoot in the air, into the air, and of course, bring some kind of confusion before they grab the box, and run away. So what is your thought? Since you're a security expert, are you not thinking in the direction of really manning the polling units properly? Because those guys will not come if they know that the uniformed men at the polling units are armed.
By saying, using the word properly, you mean armed?
Yes.
Heavily armed?
Yes. So that if you come there, you respect yourself and go and vote and go away.
Okay, Kieran, I'm going to speak like the security expert that I am. As far as I know, there are 3 cycles of security protection that our electoral security management processes allow for. The polling unit, then the outer perimeter, the inner perimeter, and then the outer perimeter. Now, the objective of these 3 cycles is one thing: to ensure a credible electoral process. If you remove one cycle from the other 2, then unfortunately you won't have the effective and efficient electoral management system. Those who initiated these cycles had one objective in mind, which is to ensure an effective electoral process. Unfortunately, we are going back to what we started this discussion on, an element of coordination. Now, when they initiated those 3 cycles, the idea was at the polling unit, you won't have armed security personnel. In the inner perimeter, you will have armed security personnel, the police, the military, and possibly the civil defense, and a few other security agencies armed in the inner perimeter. In the outer perimeter, you will have the same thing. Now, the whole idea is this, and I said I'm speaking as a security expert. The whole idea of this is a threat. And threat can mean several things. It can mean a cult group and a group of youth who want to come and disrupt the process. Under normal circumstances, even if they are able to circumvent the outer perimeter, then they should not be able to circumvent the inner perimeter. And then, of course, even if they are able to circumvent the inner perimeter, by the time they go to the polling unit, there should be an element of control. And what is that element of control? Communication. Mm-hmm. That would allow that unit to call the inner perimeter so that rapid response. Now, in security management...
I'm not interjecting. Please, this is a matter of time. It doesn't take up to 3 minutes to do that job. So when are you going to do a communication and get somebody to come there for assistance? See, we're talking about reality. The reality. I've covered elections in the past, and I know what it means for people to come and they cut away the ballot box. They are dangerous. They operate like armed robbers, as simple as that. So if somebody is in a polling unit, is unarmed, and somebody comes in with the AK-47, and you want somebody who is not armed to start making calls to bring in the people on the other perimeter, it doesn't work that way. It's a matter of time. There's a time factor in this. So why I'm asking this question, is because we know ourselves in Nigeria. And the moment the hoodlums know that the people there are unarmed, they can strike at any point in time. And this led to this inconclusive nature of elections in our country from 2003.
My point is this, and I said I'm speaking as a security expert. Studies have been done in criminology to explain that these cycles I mentioned are effective. They are. Only, but only, and I emphasize this word, only if they are implemented as a whole.
In a civilized society.
Well, not necessarily.
But of course, Kieran, our constitution provides for, you know, the type of security. He said, and you know that, you know,
we wrote the constitution. We wrote the constitution. It's as if God sent the constitution down to us.
The challenge is this. Let me just make this point. The challenge is this. If we have a situation where we have armed security personnel within the polling units, under the current climate we have, it will create bigger challenges. Yeah. But the reason is this. The ethos, and I emphasize this word, of our security functions, unfortunately, has not reached that development where it is for the protection of national interest. Unless and until the ethos of our security functions are made to meet the national interest, so that the person who is carrying the gun knows he's not working for an individual. He's working for the national interest, then I will not advocate for a gun at the polling unit.
All right, it's okay, Afam, we'll come back to you. Let's take a quick short break. We've got tweets coming. When we come back, we'll read out the tweets and then we'll ride home with more questions. All right, we've got quite a number of conversations going on right here in the studio about, of course, the militarization of elections in this country, whether or not it's applicable. But let's take our tweets. We've got quite a number of them. And Kieran, you'd like to start off with Caleb's?
All right, Caleb, a supplementary election is a good option when the situation warrants. It can be averted if every logistics are put in place by INEC and police.
And Law Alpha C tweets, INEC should be able to explain the circumstances that could lead to an inconclusive election so as to cancel the impression of bias, and Nigeria politicians should be realistic and magnanimous enough to appreciate the improvement in elections in Nigeria. The security agencies should also be on ground to protect voters and the exercise during these supplementary elections.
Now, from Francis Jethro, I really want to appreciate the efforts of NTA. INEC needs to do more on how to avoid these inconclusive elections, because as a country, it is costing Nigerians a lot economically and otherwise.
And Mike, I quote tweets, frankly speaking, we did not envisage anything like this in the 2019 general elections, but since we had it by happenstance, all hands must be on deck to see peaceful conclusions of the elections.
All right, now from Dele Jack Solomon, free and fair elections distinguish true democracies from those merely masquerading. This is because Nigeria is yet to hold general elections, particularly the presidential and gubernatorial, freely devoid of ballot rigging, voter intimidation, and other decidedly undemocratic practices since 1993. I hope he used that word correctly. Well, he continued, as we head to vote in the upcoming supplementary polls on Saturday, we must bear in mind that elections do not make a democracy. The current state of affairs in Nigeria should be a bigger concern for us all than any potential outcome of election.
All right, and Titus Monday Knock tweets, the best way to go with elections in this country is to go the way of electronic voting, where everything is done online. Rigging, thuggery, ballot box snatching, and political banditry would be eliminated, and voters can vote anywhere at their comfort. What?
I want to also listen very carefully to this one. Oti Zobeya, he said that there will never be a peaceful election until politicians are treated like every other civil servant, and their offices is made less glamorous, like in every other civilized nation. Yesterday, Claire, sorry, we had a conversation on this matter where I suggested that, look, if a senator is placed at, on level 17, for instance, and House of Reps perhaps on level 15, that nobody will fight going to representatives except those who have service in mind. Right.
All right, Festus Akiboyewa tweets, election is supposed to be a celebration of democracy. Sadly, we cannot celebrate our democracy when our elections are marred with violence, third-degree kidnapping, snatching of ballot boxes, and of course, killings. INEC must ensure this weekend's supplementary elections add value to our democracy. Certainly.
Now, from Mike Ayako, the electoral umpire must make sure that relevant materials arrive at polling stations on time. The security agencies must be on top of their duties. The whole world is interested in these elections, which is a watershed in the annals of our liberal democracy. Our democracy is developing, and we must surely get it right someday by learning from our previous mistakes.
All right, Daily Jack Solomon tweet, it's time to change the narrative as we await court rulings on, excuse me, on the recently concluded elections, and as we look up to the 2023 general elections, INEC and, excuse me, INEC and all electioneering stakeholders must keep evolving ways of improving the conduct of elections in Nigeria. The elections must be free and fair to sustain our democracy. Any attempt to subdue the people's will through electoral irregularities like ballot snatching and the rest will be a bigger threat to the peaceful coexistence, unity, and democratic progress of our nation.
All right, Omar Bolahon, every stakeholder in the rescheduled elections, military, police, paramilitary, political gladiators, INEC, the electorate must all play their roles that only will that we depict the true wish of the people. Vote, not fight. All political gladiators must come to the reality that we have only one country, Nigeria, and any attempt by stakeholders to throw the country into conflagration because of some people's desperate ambition must be eschewed. We ain't going nowhere with such move.
All right, and Paul Udofia tweets, let security agencies stop intimidating voters, mostly in areas like Osun State, he says. Okay.
All right, now Aminu Modibo, political power has often been considered the easiest route to wealth in Nigeria, and as a result, elections have been fought hotly. Claire, that's just the
the tweets that we have. Although we have more coming in, but let's again bring in Chinwe, of course, the Assistant Director, INEC Publicity, here with us. I don't know how to ask this question, but should we have you know, a cycle of margin leads, inconsistent margin lead with cancellation of, you know, ballots in these supplementary elections? What happens?
If I may answer your question directly, I will say no.
So the winner must emerge this time around?
Yes.
That we know more inconclusive.
Exactly. We are not going into this election hoping to come out with another inconclusive. Well, we have put up our plans and hoping that if our plans and processes go well as planned, the election will be concluded. We started by yesterday, Thursday, materials have moved from central bank to the local government. Then from this evening, they will be moving from the racks to the individual wards. So as to start the election on time, and everything will go on well, hopefully, with the cooperation of other stakeholders who are involved, because it's not only INEC that is involved in it. Security agencies are there, like we said, the voter, politicians themselves. They will help us to ensure that this election is concluded.
I think politicians themselves more important, you know, and because Nigerians are hoping that this rerun election will, of course, be the closing chapter of the 2019 general elections. Nigerians have actually had enough. I want to bring in Amazia Famosigo here. You know, what are your expectations?
Well, my expectation is that at the end of this process, I'm already looking towards the end of the process, that we'll be able to sit down and tell ourselves some home truths. And we'll be able to look at the different reports by different bodies and observer groups and even political parties themselves. And INEC as a body should dispassionately take the salient points from them, and we'll put in place both logistic and legal frameworks to ensure that we don't encounter this problem in the future. For example, we have to go back to the Electoral Act and pass the last version that the president vetoed, and to make sure that some of these things don't happen going forward. And I hope that INEC will be able to get it right in the states that supplementary election will take place tomorrow, and then that the judiciary should, as quickly as possible, take the right decision so that the elections or the actions proposed by INEC in other places that have been injuncted by the courts will be able to come to a conclusion, and so that we will move on. No investor will come in an uncertain environment like this, and there's also security components of this, and so many issues hang on it. It affects the economy, it affects so many things. So I think we should get it right so that the nation can move forward, so that we'll be an attractive place and a destination point for persons who may want to bring in foreign direct investment, and even for the local people to also be able to go about their businesses, which are being shut down too often and left to a whole lot of uncertainties about which way to go.
Now, in connection with the adjournment, which you talked so much about, what option does INEC have to reverse the trend?
I'm sure the lawyers engaged by INEC will be able to take the right steps, and I'm sure INEC must have engaged some of the most competent hands in this field who will be able to take the right steps, and also that the judiciary will understand the importance of taking expeditious steps so as not to be seen as being the clog in the process, so that we don't have issues going on appeal and up to the Supreme Court, and then the process remaining unconcluded or whatever, inconclusive rather, as we may say. So we need to do something about this, and maybe the judiciary should also review to what extent it should be involved at this time, even with the clear provisions of the law, that it ought not to be, to my understanding.
Maybe just say, as the last one from it to you, what are INEC's chances of getting ruling that's regarding Adam Adamawa?
Answering your question will presuppose that I know the mind of the judges, or that I have seen the processes filed. I'm just giving an opinion,
yes,
and I will also be very, very much circumspect and reluctant to comment on these cases, particularly considering that they are pending in court. But I just spoke generally without discussing the facts or circumstance or decision made in any of them.
All right. Of course, we have Kabiru here. Kabiru, in order to avoid inconclusive elections, what proactive step can we take going forward?
In very simple terms, I would say let the will and the wishes of Nigerians be allowed to prevail. All stakeholders, starting from INEC, must respect that we're in a democracy, so that Nigerians will have what they want. And the only way to ensure that is professionalism. And INEC has done a lot. It should continue to do that. Training, control mechanisms. I would ask INEC to actually improve on that in all ramifications, including security. It needs to enhance its control mechanisms. Not coming out with plans and making sure those plans are implemented is the element of control that I would like to see more. Then more importantly, and I'm very glad that you've harped on that, the conduct of politicians. They are the greatest risk, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, to our democracy. They are the #1 beneficiaries of the democratic process, yet they are the #1 risk element to the democratic process.
What are your thoughts about turnout this supplementary election?
Based on the feeds, like I said, I'm a member of an observation group. Based on the feeds I'm getting, I think people are very sensitized. People are going to come out to vote, at least in a lot of the locations where I've monitored pre-election. So I expect a voter turnout probably at par with the last 2 elections, or even may even surpass that, because there has been massive mobilization by both, the politicians themselves and to an extent INEC. And I think the media, you've been doing a wonderful job, really, in terms of the coverage. There is no TV, radio station that you tune into that is not talking about the supplementary election. So a lot of sensitization, mobilization is in place, and I expect massive voter turnout tomorrow.
And let's get that of Chinwe's own view. Have you been sensitizing people in those specific areas? Has there been any INEC sensitization mechanism with respect to this supplementary election?
We do in the states that are having elections. Our head of voter education and publicity in the states they have been making some enlightenment, letting the people know where elections are taking place and what are expected of them to do on election day. And from the feelers we are getting from the field and the states, voters are really interested and enthusiastic about coming out to vote. But they are also asking for their environment to be secured. They don't want the security men to intimidate them or cause confusion in the polling unit. If the environment is right, the Nigerians are really, really ready to come out to vote tomorrow.
And Claire, you know, you'll agree with me that this is going to be keenly contested, because in some of those states, they are vying for 78,000 votes, some are vying for 120 votes, or 1,000 votes, right? So, you see, the margin, you know, between the lead candidate and the runner-up is very slim, you know, and the votes being contested for are also not huge, right? So it's going to be keenly contested. We hope we're going to see a very good supplementary election that will be conclusive.
Yes, I like AFAM again. One of the tweets we had, you know, suggested electronic voting as a way of checking inconclusive elections.
I would not be in a hurry to suggest that, because the ballot snatching will then become electronic. But I think we should find a hybrid that involves physical voting and then also allows the collation to be transmitted to INEC center or somewhere. They should be able to, they have at their disposal enough experts in this field who should be able to advise them. Our experience in NBA, where we introduced electronic voting, has not been a very good one. It has produced two leaderships that have been contested. And then people talk about hacking, manipulating the process. I'm not saying this is correct. I'm not saying this happened, but that allegation has been there. So we not, and America also is accusing China of interfering in the electoral process, and Russia. So if these advanced countries could have this problem, I guess ours would be huge and probably worse. So we should find an electoral process that works, that will be very difficult to be manipulated, and allows the computation of results to be done in such a way that if you snatch result sheets, you actually snatch nothing, and discourage people from trying to manipulate the process.
Would you subscribe to option A4?
No, I will not.
No, they say it's crude. No, excuse me. They say it's crude, but it produced the best election result
in a situation where people, on account of their tribe or religion or something, may be intimidated as voters. So I imagine it could be worse if you openly show how you're voting. So I go
but
for.
It produced the best election.
Well, I would not want to. That was about 26 years ago, and I would like to suggest a system that not only ensures the secrecy of the votes, but the credibility of the entire process. And I will not be an advocate of
Cape Verde, because I also covered, you know, one of the elections there. I think it's operating what you call the hybrid election process, where you have collation is done, you know, physically, and then the results are sent to a database and then sent online. You know, so
Nigeria may want to look at that.
Yes, hacking is still there. You know.
Yes.
Well, let's start and see how
as
that
long as it's
plays
electronic, hacking is a possibility. There are no two ways about that. There are people who specialize in doing that.
So anyway, all right, that's where we of course say thank you to our guests, and let's begin with Mazi Afam Osigwe. Mazi Afam Osigwe would like to thank you very much, always for coming on to the show. Chinwe, thank you. Chinwe is my long-lost friend. I'm glad to have you today.
Thank you very much, Claire, for inviting me. Yeah. Good to see you again.
And Kabir Adamo, always a pleasure to have you with us here.
Pleasure is mine.
Nigeria. I think it's time we give you a title here on NTA. Thank you. Thank you for your loyalty. All right, let's quickly go over now to our